What up, folks? It's your boy Tim again, also known as Chicago in the Corner. Coming to you really quick with this somber video. Not something good, but as you can see, it's titled Hunter Biden uses the N-word. Why is the media not talking about this? And that is a very, very good question. Before we get into the video, though, I'm going to ask you to do what I always ask you to do. If you like what I'm saying at the end of the video, give me a like. If you don't, hit the dislike button. Helps my analytics, helps the channel, helps me keep bringing you these videos. And as usual, hit that subscribe button so you can know when I'm dropping these. Okay. And if you got any comments, go ahead and feel free to drop those. I respond to all comments. We can hash out any disagreements right there all day, all night. Why isn't the media going nuts over Joe Biden using the N-word? Let's just be real. If Trump dropped the N-word or Don Jr. dropped the N-word, this shit would be world news. So why isn't it being talked about when Hunter Biden does it? Well, as we all know, there is a huge double standard. And there's certainly a lot of media bias. When I say the double standard, society views the N-word coming from certain people different than they do coming from others. Particularly black people and African Americans. They get a pass on using the N-word. So does brown people, because Jennifer Lopez used the N-word in the song, and it was talked about for a second, but it didn't hurt her one bit at all. And the song went on to be a hit. And that's Jennifer Lopez, who is not black. She's brown. So, but if a Caucasian used the N-word, all of a sudden it's blown up. So there is a double standard when it comes to who gets to use the N-word. Now, I'm not here to defend that. In fact, I think it's wrong. I think if the word is bad, nobody should be able to use it. But I'm just here to tell you, being able to see both sides of things, that double standard exists. And I'm sure you already know it exists. You probably think it's wrong as well. So, when it comes to Hunter Biden, though, there is nobody black or brown in the picture. Hunter Biden's laptop was found, or I guess somebody went through his laptop, and they found a conversation that he had with his attorney, who also was white. Both parties are white, and Hunter Biden was nonchalantly using the N-word in a conversation with his attorney. So he didn't necessarily use it on a black person, but he absolutely used the word. Now, there is no way for me to continue going through this with you without it sounding somewhat like we're giving Biden a pass or we're downplaying things, because that's exactly what the media is doing with this. I'm not saying that that's right at all. I'm saying that this should be bigger news, and President Joe Biden should be called to apologize for what's going on with his son. Typically, when things like this go down, you send a guy to some kind of racial sensitivity training or something like that. He gets out and offers a huge apology. He makes a big donation to Black Lives Matter or some group, and, you know, kisses ass for a while. During the Trump era, that all went out the window. Trump was just like, I said it, goddamn it, whatever. You know, so now Hunter Biden is doing that, and the liberal media, the liberals, I'm a liberal myself, people are just mainly keeping quiet about it. And the right wing has a legitimate argument in asking, well, why the hell aren't you guys saying anything now? You would be saying it with Trump. Obviously, the liberals can say the same thing in reverse and say that, you know, if this came from the Trump, you know, this came from the Trump camp, you wouldn't be saying anything either. Both arguments are legitimate, but we're going to stick with Hunter Biden for now. The double standard, which is, like I said, that is the problem. And we know that in most cases, if you're on the right wing, you already know what's going on. Liberal media bias is at play. Like I said, if this was Trump saying this, the liberal media would have this. You'd be seeing this on different channels all over the world. It would be world news that Trump said something that was very racist indeed. Not necessarily just Trump. Don Jr. or any of his family members, if they did this, it would also be pretty big news, far bigger than it is with Joe Biden. Now, in my opinion, Joe Biden has a significant amount of racism in his past. He's been in favor of everything from stop and frisk to three-strike laws to just a whole gaggle of things that have resulted in African Americans being locked up. He came up during the Clinton administration. In fact, he was before that. You know, during the Clinton administration, they also passed a lot of laws that these big crime bills with these mandatory minimums that had huge, very lengthy sentences for, I mean, you commit a felony, no doubt, but these were sentences that would throw you away, where you you may never get out of prison again. First offense type stuff. And Joe Biden was deeply involved in that. So Joe Biden definitely has issues with the African American community. And, now you hearing it coming from his son. Now, a lot of the right are using the statement of the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So in other words, if Hunter Biden is using racism, he may have gotten it from his dad. I'm not going to necessarily buy into that argument. I'm not saying it's not true. It could be. There's no way to know. But I'm not going to buy into that argument because, once again, like I said, when we're talking about bias and double standards, if you're a right winger, you wouldn't have bought that coming from. If Trump's son or aunt said something, you wouldn't buy that. Well, that means he feels the same way too. You would not buy it. So I don't know why all of a sudden, if Hunter Biden says something, we automatically assume where his dad has to feel the same way. So I'm not going to necessarily buy that. In fact, like I just said a moment ago, Joe Biden has enough racial shit on him to the point where you don't have to use his son to try to link anything to him. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's been wealthy his entire life, just similar to the same stuff we used to say about Trump. This guy has always been wealthy. Joe Biden has never known poverty. I mean, he didn't grow up from something to be, he wasn't a grew up from nothing to something type guy. He's been wealthy. Money has never been an issue with him. So a lot of times you get people like that, and certain things like this happen. It just happened on his laptop, and somebody got a hold of the laptop. Now, I do believe, coming from a liberal side, that it is a legitimate question to ask, how did his laptop get out into the public? Doesn't take away from what he said, and that we're addressing that now, but let's just be real. If your favorite candidate, some of his private information became public from, something that should have remained private, you question how that was obtained as well. You would think that there might be some conspiracy behind it, or at the very least, you question it. I want to know, how do you get into somebody's laptop that's at that level? So that's a different question. Don't know what's going to come out of it. I didn't do enough research. I mean, did he leave his laptop unlocked and hand it to Rudolph Giuliani or somebody? I don't know, because that is kind of odd that one of his private conversations on a laptop, on a computer, which generally most computers that are privately owned have passwords and they're locked. Certainly getting into an email account, all email accounts have a password. So how they got into his laptop and got into his emails to make that public information is a legitimate question to ask. But that doesn't take away from the fact that what Hunter Biden did comes across as racist as hell. And I guess we would also bring his lawyer into it, because once he used the word, his lawyer is not. If you look at the transcripts of the conversation, which I'm not going to go into here, his lawyer didn't have any type of hesitation, or he didn't question him using the word or anything. They just kept communicating. So, which would lead me to believe he must do this kind of often. So this absolutely should be big news. It should absolutely be big news, and it's the liberal media protecting Joe Biden. Now, this is something, if you're on the right, you've always known. The media has been liberal for quite a while. Started out with Sarah Palin. Remember her famous phrase, lame stream media? That was in the 2008 John McCain campaign running against Barack Obama for his first term. And she was the one who first started saying that the media was really leaning left. I mean, it was said before then, but she made it national. The lame stream media is what Sarah Palin used to say. Under the Trump administration, it got a lot worse. And I would attribute some of that to Trump. It's mainly because, okay, the media already was leaning left. But then when you start calling them out, naming names, refusing to talk to people and things like that, you're definitely going to increase whatever hate they had for you. You just made it a lot worse. And that's kind of what happened, is that under the Trump administration, whatever left leanings the mainstream media had, they got far, far worse. Because I watch Fox and I watch a lot of CNN, and I can tell you for a fact that CNN is way further to the left now than they were 6 or 7 years ago. They also were leaning left then, but now they're comparable to MSNBC. You know, they got Al Sharpton has, you know, some of them kind of people are starting to come on there quite often. So it's way left. And that's because Trump was calling people out by name. You know, he got in fights with Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon and things like that by name. That's certainly not, if even though they were not covering him probably fair to begin with, you're certainly not going to get covered fair by a reporter when you start saying all kinds of nasty things about him in public. But that's a whole different ballgame. But that is why I believe that, or that's probably a big reason why Hunter Biden is saying this shit. And the left-wing media is not attacking him very much, because the alternative is helping out the Republicans, and the left-wing media does not like the Republican Party very much. Now, if you are against double standards, you would have to realize that when Trump tweeted out a guy yelling white power, did not apologize, didn't do anything. At the same time, on the right wing, they didn't cover that very much either. So it's not that double standards only exist on the left. And there's no way for me to bring that up without pissing off some of the right wingers, because they, you want it to be Hunter Biden just said some bullshit. Let's focus on Hunter Biden. Let's attack the Bidens. Don't bring up anything else that happened from the right that is very similar to that. And I'm not here to do that. I'm here to tell you both sides. And I'm saying that Joe Biden should be called upon to apologize for it, well, at least explain what the hell his son did. His son is a grown man, so I guess you can't really order him to apologize for what another man said, but he absolutely should address it, because it's a very close family member. And you do have right-wingers already saying the apple doesn't fall from the tree, meaning your son is a fucking racist and so are you. So Joe Biden should have to speak out and say something about that. This is where, if you're right, you're not going to like what I'm saying, but I'm going to go ahead and drop this on you. The benefit that Joe Biden is enjoying, particularly coming from African Americans today, because they would be all over this if Trump said it, or Trump's son said it, or if Trump's wife said it, or did it. This would be just a nail in the coffin to say that Trump is a racist fuck, and they're not doing it to Joe Biden or to Hunter Biden. The reason I believe that he's getting a pass from the African American community, not the left-wing media, but from the African American community, where it's not being talked about as much, is because he is not Trump. Now, I'm not saying that any of this is fair. I'm not saying I agree with any of it. I'm just telling you how I feel. And what I mean by that is that African Americans widely believe that Trump has racism in him. I mean, what did he get? Maybe 20% of the black vote, or 30%. You talk to most black people, they think that Trump is racist in nature. Now, a lot of them think that Joe Biden is as well, but because the stuff coming from Joe Biden is 20, 30, 40 years ago, and the stuff coming from Trump is very recent, because Trump was well respected in the black community before he ran for president. Once he ran for president, and some of those tweets started coming out, so he passed up Joe Biden. With Joe Biden also, now this is, like I said, it's going to sound like bullshit if you're on the right. Joe Biden ran under Barack Obama, the first black president. He's now put in Kamala Harris, the first black VP, and his administration looks like the freaking rainbow. And you're going to compare that up to Trump, and then you got to look at Hunter Biden's statement, and you got to look at Joe Biden's past, and Trump is going to lose on that every time. And that's where a lot of right-wingers are like, bullshit, Biden is more racist than Trump, et cetera, et cetera. And that's just not resonating with African Americans. And I've heard people trying to sell that argument, Trump supporters try to sell that argument all day, every day. And it's just not resonating. Black people as a whole are not buying that. They see Trump as worse. Now, when I said that Biden benefited from this, and what I mean by him not being Trump, I think if Joe Biden had to run against Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio, or particularly Chris Christie, who I really respect, Chris Christie or any of those guys, I think I think Joe Biden's chances would have been less, because there are a lot of African Americans who do believe that he has a lot of racism in him. But because they believe Trump is worse, Joe Biden won. And that's what I'm saying, is that one of Joe Biden's biggest benefits is that he is not Trump. And he was able to apologize for some horrible things in his past, hanging out with Grand Dragons, former Grand Dragons of the Klan, being in favor of all kinds of 3-strike laws and things like that just disproportionately locked up a lot of African Americans. Stop and frisk, 3 strikes, all of that kind of stuff. But it's all 20, 30, some cases 40 years ago. And here you got Trump tweeting out a white power video, couple years ago, or you know, he's at rallies and there's Confederate flags everywhere and all of that. So we can argue that, well, one person. I'm just telling you as an African American what people see and what they work with. It's a lot easier to operate on something you're seeing right now than something somebody's telling you from 30, 40 years ago. Keep in mind, when civil rights leaders bring up things that happened 30, 40, 50, 100, 200 years ago, a lot of people want to dismiss it. So when you bring up things that happened in Joe Biden's past that's 30, 40, 50 years ago, you have to understand there's going to be some people that's going to dismiss that too. Not that it didn't happen, not that it is not a legitimate thing to bring up, but you can't dismiss things over here and then say, well, these things matter. And that's what I'm saying as well, is that if you have a problem with the media and these double standards, particularly those of who can use the N-word and who cannot, but you look at Trump tweet out a video of a guy yelling white power and you don't have a problem with that, then you are actually part of the double standards. I mean, there's just no way around it. I mean, what Hunter Biden did was repulsive, and it should be addressed. It should be dealt with, period. There's no other excuse about it. But at the same time, if the president tweets out a video of a guy yelling white power and his excuse is, well, I didn't hear it, everybody who's seen the fucking video can hear it. It's the first words in the video and the guy's yelling it out. Okay, you didn't hear it. Then come back and say, listen, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do this. I'm going to take the video down. But when you don't apologize, you don't say anything, then, yeah, the I don't hear it part doesn't become so believable anymore. So if you're okay with giving Trump a pass, but you want Hunter Biden to be addressed for what he did, then you're just as biased and, you know, you're holding the same double standards as the media. I would love to hear your comments on this. Let me know what you think. I'm sure there's plenty of people who say Hunter Biden is a racist. Yeah, I'm with that. I mean, that comment sounds horrible, like I said, but there's going to be others who will say that, you know, because I'm bringing other people into it and other events and not just staying on focus and only pounding Hunter Biden and I'm not ignoring other stuff that I know that are very similar, then I'm giving Joe Biden and Hunter Biden a pass. Not trying to do that. I'm trying to point out double standards. Like I said, the video's titled, Why the Media Isn't Saying Shit About It. And I'm telling you it's because the media likes Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, the liberals, more than they do the Republicans. And they really hate them now that it's a potential chance of Trump coming back. Because keep in mind, the liberal media, not just the right-wing media, but the liberal media had a large hand in getting Trump elected in 2016. And what I mean by that is they gave him a ridiculous amount of free coverage. When you're running for office, the number one reason you raise money is for advertising. Get your radio ads out, get your TV ads out, get billboards and things like that. They put every speech Trump had on CNN, on MSNBC. He even had speeches that were preempting primetime television because he always said good shit. He was very entertaining. Whether you liked him or not, he was very entertaining. He brought a lot of people to politics that were not interested in politics. And as a result, they got a lot of people to love the guy. They didn't want to do that because they didn't realize he was going to turn around and insult the shit out of them, but they got him elected. And if you notice, they're not putting him on TV anymore like that. Same thing with social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, they also helped him out a lot because when you're running for office, just like I mentioned with TV and billboards and radio, social media in the modern age is very important. And that's really hurting Trump right now, that he cannot be on Twitter and he cannot be on Facebook. Yeah, he can create his own webpage or create his own social media anytime, but that's not going to be anywhere near the same as Facebook or Twitter, mainly because if he creates his own site, it's going to be people that's going to join it that already like him. You're not going to get any liberals that are going to watch that or tune into that stuff. It's going to be all right-wingers. He needs to expand his base, not just talk to the same old people. And with CNN and MSNBC putting his speeches on TV in 2016, they helped him expand his base. Putting out Parler or some of that stuff, that's not going to expand his base. I mean, it's going to be a whole bunch of stuff on there that's going to be anti-liberal. You see ugly pictures of Nancy Pelosi. You're going to see Confederate flags. You're going to see AOC as a fucking 8. You're not going to get any liberals that's going to tune into that. You're talking to people that already like you. That's not going to expand your base. He needs to be on sites that exist already with a diverse And when I say diverse, I don't just mean black versus white. I mean liberal, independent, everybody. You need to be somewhere where everybody is. Parler or some of them sites is just going to be right-wingers. That's just not going to do it. And he knows that. So my guess is if he does not get on a major site, he's probably not going to be able to run in 2024 because the exposure is going to be, I mean, there's going to be a lot of new people voting by 2024. A lot of people are going to turn 18. You need to be able to talk to them. And they're not going to be on some site that Trump creates. I mean, think about it. When you were 18 or 19, would you have joined a site that was created by a politician to talk politics? That's bullshit. You wouldn't be interested in that. But you're already on Facebook. You're already on Twitter. You already watch NBC and CBS. That's where you need to be. And that's going to hurt him if he doesn't get back on those sites. Anyway, double standard. Hunter Biden is on some bullshit. Joe Biden should come out and speak out on what his son did. And the African-American community should speak up because it is wrong all day, every day. Talk to me in the comments. Love me, hate me, holla at me. Chicago out.